Have you ever wondered how a country rich in history and culture, Yemen, became the battleground for one of the most devastating conflicts of our time? In the next quarter of an hour, we will delve into the heart of the Yemen conflict, a complex situation that has steadily escalated over the years. We will explore the origins, the significant events that shaped the course of the conflict, and the national and international players who have contributed to the war. We'll also touch on the impact this conflict has had, not just on Yemen, but on the world at large, and the current status of this ongoing crisis. Understanding the Yemen conflict is not just about comprehending the battles and political maneuvers, it's about acknowledging the human cost and the dire need for resolution. Join us as we unravel the complexities of the Yemen conflict. The Yemen conflict didn't occur overnight. It is a product of years of political instability and unrest. Let's take a step back to the year 2011. A wave of civil uprisings, known as the Arab Spring, was sweeping across the Middle East and North Africa. Yemen was no exception. The Yemeni revolution was a powerful public outcry against unemployment, economic conditions, and corruption, culminating in the demand for the end of President Ali Abdullah Saleh's 33-year rule. Saleh, however, didn't go down without a fight. The resulting power struggle deepened the existing political and social fissures in the country, creating a fertile ground for conflict. Enter the Houthi movement. This group, formerly known as Ansar Allah, had been simmering under the surface for years, primarily in the north of Yemen. The political chaos gave the Houthis an opportunity to rise. Originally a religious and cultural movement aimed at countering Sunni Wahhabism, the Houthis soon found themselves becoming a significant political force. Their slogan, "God is great, death to the US, death to Israel, curse the Jews, and victory for Islam," resonated with a portion of the population frustrated by years of perceived marginalization and economic hardship. By the end of 2014, the Houthi movement had effectively taken control of Yemen's capital, Sana'a. This sudden shift in power dynamics didn't sit well with the existing government or their international allies. The stage was set for a full-blown conflict. But it's important to remember that this isn't a simple case of a government versus a rebel group. The Yemen conflict is a complex web of local, regional, and international interests, all vying for control, influence, and resources. It's a multi-layered chess game, with the Yemeni people caught in the middle. This was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey for Yemen. The conflict in Yemen has taken many turns over the years. It's a complex web of alliances, betrayals, and shifts in power. Let's take a walk through the timeline of this conflict to get a better grasp of its progression. In 2004, the seeds of the conflict were planted when the Houthi insurgency began in northern Yemen. This rebellion was led by the Zaidi Shia Muslim group, known as the Houthis, who felt marginalized by the government. The insurgency led to 6 rounds of fighting between the Houthis and the Yemeni government, with ceasefires that were repeatedly broken. Fast forward to 2011, in the wake of the Arab Spring, Yemen saw massive protests against corruption, economic conditions, and President Ali Abdullah Saleh's rule. Saleh was eventually forced to hand over power to his deputy, Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi, in 2012, marking the beginning of a new chapter in Yemen's political landscape. However, this transition was far from smooth. Hadi struggled to unite the country's various factions, and the Houthis, along with other groups, seized this opportunity to amplify their influence. In 2014, the Houthis took over Yemen's capital, Sana'a, and by early 2015, they had effectively ousted Hadi's government. This takeover alarmed Yemen's neighbors, particularly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who perceived the Houthi advance as a threat to their security. In March 2015, a Saudi-led coalition launched a military intervention against the Houthis, with airstrikes aimed at restoring Hadi's government. The following years witnessed a number of significant battles, such as the Battle of Aden in 2015 and the Battle of Al-Hudaydah in 2018. These battles were not just about territorial gains, but also about controlling Yemen's vital resources and access points. Parallel to the military conflict, Yemen has experienced a severe humanitarian crisis. The United Nations has called it the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with millions of people on the brink of famine. Cholera outbreaks, acute malnutrition, and other health crises have compounded the suffering of the Yemeni people. Despite multiple rounds of peace talks and ceasefires, the conflict has continued unabated. In 2020, the Southern Transitional Council, a separatist group in southern Yemen, declared self-rule, adding another layer of complexity to the conflict. In recent years, the battleground has expanded to include cyber warfare and drone attacks, reflecting the evolving nature of modern conflicts. The Houthis have also ramped up missile and drone attacks on Saudi Arabia, further escalating tensions in the region. The conflict has only escalated with time, plunging Yemen into a state of chaos. Each twist and turn in this timeline paints a stark picture of the challenges Yemen faces and underscores the urgent need for a peaceful resolution. As we move forward, we must remember that behind these dates and events are real people enduring unimaginable hardships. Their stories are a sobering reminder of the human cost of conflict. A conflict of this scale involves many players, each with their own agendas. Indeed, Yemen's conflict is not just a local issue, but a complex web of national and international stakeholders, each wielding a significant influence on the course of events. Let's begin with the Houthis. Originating as a Zaidi Shiite rebellion in the early 2000s, the Houthi movement has grown into a significant force. Their ascendancy in Yemen, marked by the seizure of the capital Sana'a in 2014, ignited the current conflict. The Houthis, driven by a mix of political, religious, and economic grievances, have proved resilient, maintaining control over significant parts of the country despite years of war. On the other side of the divide is the Yemeni government. Backed by a coalition led by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, the government has been fighting to regain control from the Houthis. However, internal divisions and challenges have weakened its position. The government's relationship with the coalition is far from straightforward, with both allies and adversaries within. Saudi Arabia's involvement is crucial. The kingdom views the Houthi movement as an Iranian proxy on its doorstep, a perception that has driven its intervention. The Saudis have invested heavily in the war, both in terms of finances and military resources. However, the conflict has proven costly, with international criticism over humanitarian issues and little progress on the ground. Iran, on the other hand, has supported the Houthis, although the extent and nature of this support remain a subject of debate. Regardless, Iran's role has undoubtedly contributed to the conflict's internationalization, drawing in regional rivals and fueling the proxy war narrative. And then there are the other national and international players. The United Arab Emirates, despite its involvement in the Saudi-led coalition, has pursued its own agenda in southern Yemen. The US and UK, among others, have been implicated through their arms sales and logistical support to the coalition. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda and ISIS have exploited the chaos to gain footholds in the country. Various UN bodies and international NGOs have also played roles, mostly in trying to mitigate the humanitarian crisis and broker peace. However, their efforts have been frustrated by the war's complexity and the parties' unwillingness to compromise. Each actor in this drama has their own objectives, strategies, and alliances, creating a tangled web of interests that exacerbates the conflict. The internationalization of the war has turned Yemen into a battleground for larger geopolitical rivalries, adding layers of complexity to an already intricate situation. The involvement of these actors has only complicated the resolution of the conflict. Indeed, as each player pushes their own agenda, the prospects for a swift and peaceful resolution seem increasingly distant. It's a sobering reminder that in conflicts like these, it's the ordinary people who bear the brunt of the suffering. The consequences of the Yemen conflict are far-reaching and devastating. A nation once known for its rich history and culture now faces one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The relentless warfare has left millions of Yemenis in dire need of aid, with the United Nations estimating that approximately 24 million people, nearly 80% of the population, require humanitarian assistance. The dire situation is further exacerbated by widespread famine, an issue that has been haunting Yemen for years. The World Food Programme estimates that 2/3 of the population is on the brink of starvation, with children being the most affected. And if famine wasn't enough, disease outbreaks are another grim reality. Cholera, a disease that was nearly eradicated globally, has seen a resurgence in Yemen, with over 2 million suspected cases reported since 2017. The economic impact of the conflict is equally distressing. The Yemeni economy, heavily dependent on oil exports, has shrunk by an estimated 50% since the conflict began. This has led to soaring unemployment rates, with the World Bank estimating that more than 40% of Yemen's workforce is unemployed. On a societal level, the conflict has caused immense damage. Education, a cornerstone of societal development, has been severely disrupted. The United Nations Children's Fund estimates that 2 million children are out of school due to the conflict, further jeopardizing the future of the nation. Culturally, Yemen's rich heritage has suffered greatly. Many of the country's historical landmarks, some dating back thousands of years, have been destroyed in the crossfire, a loss that is both irreplaceable and profound. As we delve deeper into the impact of the conflict, it becomes increasingly clear that the war in Yemen is not just a political or military battle. It is a humanitarian catastrophe, a crisis that has left a nation on the brink of collapse. Yemen, once a vibrant nation, now lies in ruins. Despite the bleak picture, efforts are underway to bring peace to Yemen. As we speak, the country finds itself in a delicate state of flux. The conflict, which has ravaged Yemen for close to a decade, shows signs of de-escalation, but true peace remains elusive. A series of peace talks have taken place, mediated by international organizations and nations invested in regional stability. These dialogues, though often strained, have resulted in temporary ceasefires and have opened channels of communication between warring factions. The current status of the conflict, while still deeply concerning, is not without its glimmers of hope. There is an increased recognition among the international community of the urgent need to address the humanitarian crisis. This has led to an influx of aid and resources, which, while not a solution to the conflict itself, goes a long way in alleviating the immediate suffering of the Yemeni people. But let's be clear, aid is not a solution, it's a bandage. The solution lies in diplomacy and negotiation, in addressing the root causes of the conflict and finding a way to reconcile the divergent interests of the parties involved. Several potential solutions have been suggested by experts and policymakers. These include power-sharing agreements, economic reforms, and disarmament programs. However, implementing these solutions is easier said than done. It requires political will, compromise, and most importantly, a commitment to peace. In the midst of all this, we must not forget the people of Yemen. Any solution must prioritize their needs, their rights, and their future. This includes not just immediate humanitarian aid, but also long-term developmental support to rebuild the country and its institutions. The situation in Yemen is complex, and there is no magic bullet to resolve the conflict overnight. It will take time, patience, and a whole lot of diplomacy. The path to peace is fraught with challenges, but hope remains. As we continue to monitor the situation, let us remember that every step towards peace, however small, is a step in the right direction. The Yemen conflict is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of war. A conflict that began as a domestic power struggle has burgeoned into a complex international crisis. The genesis of the conflict, the timeline, the main actors involved, the profound impact, and the current status of the Yemen conflict have all been examined in our discussion today. In the heart of the Middle East, Yemen's struggle is not just its own. It's a shared burden, a global responsibility. A nation's people, rich in culture and history, are caught in the crossfire of power and politics. The ramifications of this war have been far-reaching, marked by human loss, infrastructural damage, and a profound humanitarian crisis. The main actors in this conflict are not only national factions vying for power, but also international players whose interests and interventions have complicated the road to peace. The timeline of this conflict tells us that it is not merely a recent event, but a long-standing issue rooted in historical, political, and socio-economic factors. The impact of this conflict is heart-wrenching, with millions displaced, countless lives lost, and a country brought to the brink of collapse. The current status of the conflict signals a desperate need for resolution, for peace and stability in a land torn apart by war. The pressing need of the hour is for international cooperation to help resolve this conflict. It's about time that the world turns its attention to this forgotten war, to the people of Yemen crying out for peace, for humanity. Your awareness, your understanding of this conflict, is the first step towards making a difference. The journey of understanding the Yemen conflict does not end here. It is a continuous process, a constant call to action. We urge you to keep learning, keep questioning, and above all, keep caring. For it is in our collective empathy and action that we can hope to bring about change. Remember, understanding is the first step towards making a difference. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Yemen conflict.